All right, y'all, it is a wrap on the Donna Adelson trial, and it was a crazy, crazy final day, full of drama, full of emotional outbursts, and all kinds of things. It is the end of trial day 9 for Donna Adelson's murder trial. Okay, so the day started out with a few changes to the jury instructions. No big deal, but the defense decided that they wanted to drop the lesser included charges and have them removed from the jury instructions, meaning basically all or nothing with the first degree murder charge, no option for second degree or manslaughter. Now, this isn't a huge deal because the main element that's different is the premeditation, and it's not like those guys drove 8 hours and stayed overnight in the heat of passion, so not a huge deal. Now, there was a short break, and then the jury was brought in, and the judge read the instructions to them. There are 3 charges against Donna that they have to consider here. Count 1 is first degree murder. Now, one of the jury instructions on this is basically if Donna paid for the crime, she's considered guilty, even if she wasn't there when the act was committed. And remember, the prosecution has shown evidence that Donna took the money to Charlie that night to pay Katie, and then Katie is paying the hitman. So, if the jury believes that that was proven, she's considered guilty. Now, this is the most serious count of the 3. The next count is solicitation of murder, which is basically asking, hiring, or encouraging someone to commit the crime. And then the final is conspiracy to commit murder, which is agreeing, conspiring, or combining with another person to commit the offense. In this case, the agreement itself would be the crime. So the judge then reads over the instructions on how to consider witness testimony, what reasonable doubt is, how to weigh evidence, and an explanation of the burden of proof. So once that's out of the way, it's time for the prosecution's closing arguments, which were given by prosecutor Georgia Kappelman. So Georgia begins by showing a picture on the screen for the jury of Dan Markel. She says he was a son, a brother, a colleague, a mentor, a professor, a friend, but most of all, a father. And his number one priority was maximizing time with his boys during the bitter divorce with their mother. She says he wasn't just a file on a lawyer's desk. He was a real person. And despite what the defense's so-called expert thought about how big the divorce file was, Dan cared very deeply about every single scrap of paper in that binder because this was his life. These are his kids. An attorney who has seen thousands of cases may feel like this one wasn't contentious, but she never even worked with Dan and Wendy, and it was contentious to them and to Donna. Now, Georgia says the defense said what a great guy Dan was in their openings, but then brought in witnesses to say what a pain in the butt he was. And Georgia says he was. He was a pain in the butt to Wendy. He was fighting for his kids. And he was a pain in the butt to Donna because he was the only person that Donna couldn't control. And when she couldn't control someone, she resorted to psychological warfare and was willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish her main goal, the one she called non-negotiable, and that was getting Wendy and the boys to Miami to be near her. Now, Georgia tells the jurors that there was even a heartfelt email that Dan sent at one point where he's talking about the things that he did wrong in their marriage. Wendy, for some reason, forwards this to her mother, and Donna tells her to use that against him. She says, look at all the things he's admitting to. We can use this. Georgia tells them that's not what any normal person would do. This is weird. And she encourages them to look at it. She says Donna isn't the sweet little grandma that she wants to be perceived as. She's angry. And as she talks about this, she puts up a slide for the jurors to look at with all of the hateful names that Donna was calling Dan. Now, Georgia then laid out the reason that this began, the timeline, and the evidence. Donna has a history of micromanaging everything in Wendy's life. And when she can't get it done, she goes directly to Charlie to solve all of her problems. And while Charlie may have been the one to find the person to carry this out, the prosecution argues that Donna was for sure pulling the strings. Georgia mentions the email where Donna laid out every moment and every trip that Dan had taken for years. And so it makes sense that she would also know when he was going to be out of town or when he was going to be in town so that the hitmen could show up. And then once you walk through the timeline, things look even worse for Donna. Donna has Charlie convince Wendy not to buy the house in Tally. And this is at the same time that he talks to Katie McBenoit to set up this hit. Jeff Lacasse met Wendy a few weeks later and says that she would not stop talking about Dan and the ongoing litigation. Donna sends that weird text to Charlie that she tells him to delete after reading, and they start talking in code about it being Harvey's birthday gift. And Georgia explains that's code for the hit, because Rob testified there was no birthday gift. And even if there was, Charlie wouldn't need to delete that text because that text didn't even say anything about a birthday gift. And Charlie wasn't with Harvey anyway. Why would he need to delete it? The grandma motion is filed to put restrictions on Donna's visitation, and it's only like a week later that Donna and Harvey buy a condo in South Beach. That's the condo that Wendy would end up moving into after Dan's murder, and they even listed her as a resident on there before Dan was killed. Both times the hitmen went to tally, Wendy was acting stressed out and erratic. And after the first failed attempt, Charlie told Donna in their code that he was still looking for Harvey's birthday gift. She says she knows it's a hard one, but she knows he'll pull through. Wendy also texts Dan from Donna's place in Miami to make sure that he's going to be there, and it happened to be those dates of the murder. And then there's the whole TV situation. The broken TV that sat there for a month before Donna set up the appointment for it to be fixed on the same day that Dan was killed. The phone calls to Donna after everything that happened, keeping her filled in on every little aspect of the plan, including the car rentals and when the hitmen arrived in Tally. And while all of that looks bad, some of the worst evidence against Donna is what happened after Dan's murder. Georgia brings up the bump and how Donna's behavior after that is not the behavior of an innocent woman. When she's approached by this man and handed a flyer about Dan's death, what does she do? She calls Charlie.
When Charlie asked Donna on State's 99 call A,
Does it involve me? Well, what's that? Probably the two of them.
does it involve me or other people? Well, probably both of us. That is direct evidence. If anyone in that jury room wants to acquit her, make them tell you how that is not a confession.
Okay, y'all, that part gave me chills. And it's more than just that. Charlie tells Donna not to talk about this in the apartment. And she's like, oh, obviously. Okay, but what's obvious about that? Because that wouldn't be obvious to an innocent person to not talk about a man approaching you on the street. Georgia then discusses how this whole extortion defense that Charlie used was adopted by Donna. And she says it makes no sense. And she lays out all the reasons why. It's at this point that Donna begins to have a visible reaction in the courtroom, y'all. And even though it's rare for an objection during closing arguments, defense attorney Jackie Fulford objects. Take a look.
Donna Adelson calls Charlie's story the truth when it suits her to support her son and proclaim his innocence during his trial, but now she kind of wants to distance herself from that because it's ridiculous story. It's not the truth. The truth wasn't out. Don't let her distance herself. She adopted that statement as the truth. She's stuck with it.
Lawyers approach.
Now, I can't remember a trial where I've ever seen the jury sent out during closing arguments for a break so that the attorneys can argue something. I'm not saying it's never happened, but I'm saying I can't think of a time that I've seen it. The judge explains that the evidence is full of adoptive admissions, which is basically the legal term for when one party accepts what someone else says as true. So by Donna accepting Charlie's statements as true and saying, this is the truth is finally coming out, that evidence is allowed to be used against her. So after the break to argue all of this, the jurors are brought back in and Georgia wraps things up. She reminds the jury that the Adelsons thought that they were untouchable by law enforcement. We can tell from their wiretaps that when they thought it was the police, they were like, oh yeah, this is great, it's just the police. Then she points out some of the more damaging evidence and statements that look really incriminating. And Georgia says the end justifies the means for Donna, and that summarizes this entire case. So once the prosecution is done, it was time for the defense's closing arguments. I don't even really know where to go with this one. I don't know what I was expecting, but I know it wasn't this. The state's closing must have kind of ruffled their feathers, because the first thing Jackie Fulford addressed when she got up there had nothing to do with Donna. Take a look.
And I'd like to take you back to my opening statement. In my opening statement, there were some things referred to today that I'd like to address. The first one is that I stood up in my opening statement and said all of these wonderful things about Dan Markel, and then I called witnesses to attack him. That is not true. That is not true. In fact, the defense is the only part of this case that actually elicited evidence through testimony about the good qualities of Dan Markel. We elicited that on cross from his ex-wife, Wendy.
Okay, I'll give her this. Jackie seemed like she felt very passionate about what she was saying. The pounding on the podium, we won't play it all, but that happened a lot. And the raised voice, it was definitely different, but at least she seemed passionate about it. Take a look at a few of the highlights of this passion.
And to this day, she wants you to believe that that money sat in her closet and she spent it along the way. These are the bad names that my client called Danny Markel. During the course of a divorce where her daughter is constantly venting to her about what she says Danny is doing, she said some really bad names, and I'm going to say them, although you shouldn't say bad words in court. She called him some ugly stuff. You don't like our theory? That's what they say. You don't like our theory? Oh, well, you like our theory on everybody else. Pick one. If you have prosecuted Charlie Adelson for paying the $138,000 staple, just like their other witnesses in this case said, why are they now saying Donna Adelson provided the money? So she's trying to give him a hint without actually saying on the phone what's going on. These are hints, not code words like the state wants you to believe.
Okay, so at one point, Jackie brought up all the names that Donna called Dan, and she listed them out one by one. Now, remember, during prosecution's closings, they had put the slide up, but Jackie actually read them aloud. And look, I get where she was going with this. She said that these bad words are what got us to the point where they brought on murder charges. But I don't think it had the impact she was hoping for. I think it kind of reminded the jurors how much Donna hated Dan. And hearing the words out loud back to back, I don't know, I don't think that helped. Now, Jackie says the state is spinning all of this to make it sound like Donna is the mastermind and that everyone is pointing the finger at everyone else. She kind of throws Charlie and Wendy under the bus here too, telling the jury that they might think, hey, it looks like Charlie and Wendy are definitely guilty. But she says that has nothing to do with Donna.
You may be sitting in that jury room thinking, well, Charlie did it, and it sure looks like Wendy did it. That doesn't have an ounce to do with Donna Adelson doing a thing. Not a single thing. If you think he did it, he's been convicted. He admitted in his testimony that he is the person, although he claims he was extorted, he is the person that took $138,000 out of his refrigerator-size safe that he has at his house with the money exactly like he says he kept it, stapling $100 bills together in stacks of 1,000, staple, 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 staple. He said he took that money out of his safe and he gave it to Catherine Magbanowa that night.
So the closings seem kind of all over the place, but I think basically Jackie is just working to try to discredit individual pieces of evidence and each witness who testified against Donna. Now, for some, that's not such a big deal. I mean, it's kind of easy usually to discredit jailhouse informants and, in this case, the other conspirators because they've already been convicted. But there was one witness that she tried to discredit, and y'all, it really rubbed me the wrong way. Take a look.
Let's talk about Rob Adelson. They brought him in here and he got up there and he testified on the stand about allegedly all of these things that he claims his mother said. If you were paying attention by the time we got to cross-examination, what did we learn about Rob Adelson? Well, he's a doctor and he's got little kids, so he's real busy, which is his explanation for why he rarely speaks to his family on the telephone and has in that time period only been down to see his family 2 times in a 2.5-year period. And he rarely talks to him on the phone, but somehow Miss Adelson has made all of these comments. This is a guy with an axe to grind.
Calling Rob, the son who is estranged from his family because of the terrible way that Donna treated him and his wife, calling him a guy with an axe to grind, I don't know, that did not go over well with me or with anyone in our live stream chat. I think Rob Adelson was one of the most genuine and honest witnesses that we heard from. And the reason Jackie said that he is estranged from the family wasn't factual based on what we've heard Rob say before. I don't know, I felt like it was a low blow. But also, I kind of feel sympathetic and protective of Rob because of what he's been through with his family. What do y'all think? Let me know in comments. So, after a very interesting closing argument, Jackie says that she's going to sum it up. And that very loud passion returned while she did that.
If you were going to have proof that Donna Adelson committed a crime, you should have had it beyond a reasonable doubt before you put handcuffs on her in the Miami International Airport. They still didn't even know that day if they were going to arrest her. In all the evidence they have collected, she can't help herself but run her mouth. Not a single email, no phone calls that are recorded, no written documents, no emails, not one single thing that said anything about wanting Dan Markel killed. The most aggressive thing they have are her foul words and wanting to aggravate him.
Now, out of everything, I think there were 2 good points that Jackie made. One is the FBI did wiretaps on Charlie and Katie, but not on Donna. That's pretty good, right? And then 2 is that Luis Rivera pointed to Wendy as the lady who wanted her kids back, but didn't point to Donna. So that was good. Now, Georgia had a few short minutes to do a rebuttal, and while it was short, y'all, it was impactful. She said, basically, look, I'm sorry there's not a smoking gun, but Donna was too smart for that. She was careful, but she made mistakes. And Georgia said that's what all those exhibits are, mistakes. To end it all, Georgia says, Donna decided what was best for everyone and what they needed. She thought she knew what was best for Wendy and for Wendy and Dan's children. So Donna did what she wanted because she felt like that was the most important thing. Donna had no concern for the collateral damage that she was causing, as long as she gets what she wants. Now, to demonstrate this, Georgia shows an email where Donna was responding to Wendy about one of the children being sad because he missed his father. And y'all, Donna's response to this is not what you would expect from a loving grandmother.
I still do not believe that Ben is sad about his father. I spend a minimum of 25 hours a week with him, and oftentimes more than that, including weekend times and sleepover days, and have never experienced a time when he was sad. I think it's just another phase of the many, many phases that kids go through. The problem is they have a highly intelligent and sensitive mom. She doesn't believe that this kid is sad because she can't take accountability for her own actions and the catastrophic consequences that this had on everyone's life in her family. Not just her son, not just her daughter, not just Rob, not just Dan Markel, but those boys who lost their father. It wasn't better for them to be in South Florida. It was better for them to have their father. You must not base your verdict on the feelings of sympathy, prejudice, bias. Your verdict must be based on the evidence and the law. Yes, she's a grandmother. Most murderers don't look like that. But the evidence has revealed what she is.
Gosh, that last part, the evidence has revealed what she is. That's pretty powerful. So the jury gets back to deliberations room. It's a little after 4 o'clock. We don't hear anything until about 7:30. We get word that there's a verdict. Now, this is interesting because it took a little more than 3 hours. And for Charlie's verdict, it took right at 3 hours. So it was interesting. Here's a clip of the verdict being read in court and the explosive reaction after.
We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Mrs. Adelson, control yourself. Count 2. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the indictment, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Count 3. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 3 of the indictment, solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder.
Normally, when the verdict is being read, the defendants remain kind of stoic. They're told not to have outbursts. But y'all, she had an outburst. The jury even had to be sent out of the room while she got herself together. Now, the sentencing isn't happening on the same night. They're going to do that next month. But the Markels actually live in Canada. So while they're there, they had the opportunity to go ahead and give their victim impact statements. And that was one of the most powerful parts of this entire trial. The victim impact statements are always some of the most powerful moments of a trial. And even while those are being read, Donna had trouble keeping herself together. She actually could be seen behind Phil and Ruth while they're reading their impact statements, still shaking her head. Take a look.
These extraordinary efforts underscore the brutal truth of our family's story. Danny's murder was orchestrated by his former mother-in-law, Donna Adelson, and other co-conspirators, and is a crime of cruelty.
I can't even imagine what the Markels have been through. This has been such a long process, and this is the 4th trial that they've had to sit through. But I hope that this one, wrapping up, is able to give them a little bit more peace as they move forward. Now, that's a wrap for Donna Adelson, y'all. What do you think? Do you think the jury got it right? Let me know. And sentencing will be next month, but we can already pretty much guarantee that it's going to be a life sentence because of the conviction for the first-degree murder. So I will see y'all very soon right here on Crime Junkie Jury.